Get more on this. We're joined by TRT World's Oubai Shahbandar, who is live here in the studio. Oubai, good to see you again. So, China wielding its military might, it seems, all over the world. Talk us specifically about these lasers, firstly. How dangerous are they?
Well, it seems that China is bent on challenging the U.S. for access and dominance in the Horn of Africa. Djibouti is a very strategic area, and as we heard, the Pentagon is claiming that in over 4 separate incidents, military-grade, very powerful lasers have been shined at American flight crews who are flying over Djibouti. We do know that the U.S. has a massive military base in Djibouti, 4,000 personnel, but China has just recently opened a military base of its own, its first military base overseas, right down the road, essentially, from the U.S. military base. So some competing interests between the two. The Chinese have not commented on this incident, but we do know that the U.S. and the military in particular is very concerned, given that the U.S. has its largest military base in Eastern Africa, in Djibouti, but it seems that the Chinese are also there in this area, and they are challenging the Americans for control of a very strategic section of the Horn of Africa. So some very competing interests between the two countries.
We have seen China's interest in Africa increase over the last few years when it comes to business and so on. What do you think the purpose is here in the Horn of Africa when it comes to this, specifically with this military base?
Well, it's no surprise that China chose Djibouti as its first site for its military base overseas. President Xi Jinping of China met with his Djibouti counterpart just in November of last year, where China and Djibouti pledged a strategic partnership. This is, of course, part of China's One Belt, One Road project that includes billions of dollars of investments across Africa, and especially in Eastern Africa, in areas that China considers very strategically important for its international interests.
We've seen recently China battling with the U.S. When it comes to trade. We've got the current trade delegation in China, and then the South China Sea is another contentious issue. Where is this going to all end up, especially with President Trump and his relationship with China?
Well, that's what's so very interesting. President Trump considers Xi Jinping a friend, but of course, friends can also be adversaries. We're seeing the Americans discussing potentially billions of dollars of additional tariffs against China. So that's very much a point of contention. And just as with the South China Sea, it seems that China is going to be also challenging the Americans for control and access in another strategic waterway in the Horn of Africa, which of course controls a significant amount of important waterway traffic, and could also mean that China could use Djibouti as a launching point to expand its military footprint across of Eastern Africa. And of course, that challenges American interests, and it seems that Washington is very much concerned. It could be lasers today, and who knows how it could escalate in the future.
Oubai, really good to speak to you. Our security correspondent, Oubai Shahbandar, joining me there.